Hey guys, Brooksy Tech here, and today I am going to be doing an overview of my X79 build, going over the specs, kind of some of the benchmarking results, and after that I will give you my thoughts if you should build one in 2020. So let's go ahead and get started. So here you'll see I got the completed build. It's just using a generic Aliexpress cooler, have the 2667 V2 Xeon CPU in there, 32 gigabytes of Samsung DDR3, just regular desktop memory. It's rated at 1600 megahertz, but I actually was able to overclock this to 1866 without having to run any extra volts to the memory sticks. Unfortunately, one negative of the PlexHD, or otherwise known as the X79 Turbo motherboard, is you can flash a BIOS that does have some additional overclock settings, especially if you have like a 16 series, like one of the 1650 or 1680 V2 chips that have an unlocked multiplier, but they do not have extra settings for overvolting the CPU or overvolting the RAM. But my memory, I ran memory tests on it for a few hours, running at 1866, no issues. So that's actually running really fast in quad channel. So I got the B75 chipset version, unfortunately, which has only one SATA 3 port and 5 SATA 2 ports, and I actually tested all those just to verify that. But not a big deal. I just have some DVD drive, a Blu-ray drive, and a couple just data storage drives. So these aren't going to saturate even a SATA 2 port. So not a huge deal. And then the SSD, it can run on the SATA 3. And I did have an NVMe in here. I actually took it out for another build, but the NVMe did get full PCI 3 speeds at 4x. I did have to lower this down to an 8x slot in the BIOS, but this RX 580 4 gigabyte was not saturated, or was not saturating the even at X8 speed, so that is more than plenty. So you know, a great board if you do have an NVMe. And then yeah, everything's working. I don't have this fan plugged in because I was waiting on an extension cable from China, and it just hasn't come yet. But it has the USB 3.0 header. All the front panel headers work, no issues, front panel audio, etc. And then we can start looking at some of the benchmarks here. So I was getting a, let's first go to the Passmark CPU score of 16,360. That's actually a really good score. That's going to compete with some of the newer Ryzen chips and the Intel, and a single CPU threaded score of 1984. So still pretty fast. One thing to keep in mind though is this chip is pretty expensive. It cost me like $105 shipped on eBay, but they tend to go more towards like 120, 130. The prices have been dropping on them a little bit, but still a pretty expensive chip. I would probably kind of more look at like a 2650 V2 or the 2689 V1. Those are actually really great chips with the 8 cores, 16 threads. But yeah, you can see that I have the chip here. And one issue I was having is, I think it's a voltage issue with the CPU, is it doesn't actually turbo up to the 40 multiplier. And I just think it's just because the motherboard doesn't supply enough voltage for that single core turbo at the 40 multiplier, which is unfortunate, but it still turbos up to about 36 on the multiplier. So that's all cores running at 3.6 gigahertz, which is actually really fast. As you can see, the memory is running in quad channel at the 1866. DRAM actually only runs at 931, but it has like the double cycle. I forget exactly what it's called, equaling the 1866. And if you actually go over to my memory score, it's a 2690, which is actually really good. If you see, that's still in the 87 percentile, so faster than 87% of the world, for those who have reported to Passmark. And then you can look at our Cinebench R15 scores. I did do 2 videos of Cinebench R15 and R20, but that was running with a screen recording software in the background, so it did take a hit on my scores. But as you'll see, the Cinebench R15 score is 1248, and then down to here, it's 2601. And then here are just some of the temperatures. So it actually idles pretty low, if that's accurate, and it doesn't use too many watts. This is a 130 watt chip. I know the 2689 is like a pretty high one. The 2650 V2 should only be about 110, so a little lower. But anyways, everything's running good. I haven't had any issues. I know some people like to kind of rag on these boards and just say, you know, they're junk, or you're going to have issues, and I didn't notice any of that. And the shipping was really fast. I got this in about 10 days. But anyways, let's go ahead and pause the video here, and I want to show off running some of the Doom. I know that's a popular game for a lot of the benchmarks, and I was actually getting really good results with the RX 580. All right, so we are running Doom. I'm going to try and do this one-handed, but as you can see, it is running great. I have ultra settings set, and it is at 1080p, so 1920 by 1080. And as you can see, we're not too much going on the screen right now, but as you can see, the frame rate is well into the hundreds. Sounds like the video card is ramping up, but we'll go ahead and go in the room here, and I think, as you can see, we got some enemies now kind of going after us. Frames are dropping a little bit. We're kind of more into the 70s and 60s, but this is a very large open area, so a lot to kind of render. But you know, I'd say I'm pretty happy with the performance with this. Oops, actually jumped off the ledge. But you know, if you want to build a gaming PC, I think this is definitely a valid platform. But let's go ahead and exit out, and I'll give you kind of my final thoughts. All right, so should you build a socket 2011 Xeon-based CPU in 2020? Here are my thoughts. I think in 2020, especially since I've been messing around with a Ryzen 3600 build, I would say probably not, unless you are on a limited budget and you already have a lot of DDR3 RAM laying around. I've had this 32 gigabyte kit for a few years now, and so it's really easy to pop into this build. But if you're in the US, prices right now on Ryzen setups are really cheap. I think if you have a Micro Center by you can get a Ryzen 3600 for like 160 bucks, and then get a cheap B450 motherboard. But you know, not everyone has access to, you know, cheap new parts, and they have high taxes or high import costs, stuff like that. So I think if you're kind of in a emerging market where you don't have access to, you know, good quality new parts, I would say definitely this would be a quality build. Pair this with like a 2650 V2. Pick yourself up a used RX 570 or 580 from Aliexpress for less than 100 bucks. Throw in some server memory, and you could have a really nice gaming build that's still able to play a lot of the newer titles at 1080p. You know, this was a really fun build, and I like tinkering, so I hope you guys enjoyed the channel. You know, make sure to give my video a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. I'll definitely be doing more videos of my Ryzen build as we start to get into that, but hope you guys have a good one. Thanks. Bye.